So welcome everybody to our Fireside Chat. It's our inaugural chat. It's called Strength Has No Gender, and it is going to be a bi-monthly thing for Girls Rule the Law. The first one is finding your personal power in the workplace. And for that, we have a number of three wonderful ladies here. We have Judge Marsha Michael. We have attorneys Christine Rodriguez and Erica Edwards O'Neill, who are going to share their experiences and what they've learned in their years of practice, and for the judge, since she's been a judge, and before that when she was a lawyer. But before I get into their bios and do their introductions, I just want to tell you a little bit about us and what we do at Girls Rule the Law. Girls Rule the Law is an organization. It's a 501c3 nonprofit organization that teaches young ladies about the law. And we deal mostly with middle and high school girls. And what we're trying to do is to create a pipeline into the law. So by the law would mean not just the legal field for the lawyers, but also the judiciary, like Judge Michael here, and also the legislature. Why do we want to do that? Why is it that this was so important for us to do here at Girls Rule the Law? Well, in case you haven't noticed, here now in 2020 is the first time in the centuries-old history of our country that we have actually elected a woman vice president, which is wonderful. But it took us centuries to get there. And that's only a vice president. We have never elected a woman president. Here where I sit in New York, we've never had a woman governor. We've never had a woman mayor of New York City, which is the most populated city in New York. And why is that? Is it because we feel that women are not capable, or women not able to be leaders? Absolutely not. We know that women can do anything that men can do. So why is it taking us so long? Every day that we look at leadership and it's all men and it's mostly all white men, it tells us maybe that we are not worthy. And we don't want that. We no longer want that. It's unacceptable. So that's part of what we do at Girls Rule the Law, is we're trying to create that pipeline. We're trying to teach girls the skills that they need every day in a whole bunch of different ways so that they can be ready for day one for these types of jobs. We do this through youth conferences. We have a youth conference every year, with the exception of this year due to COVID. Roundtable discussions, events like this one. We do law days when we go to the schools and commandeer a cafeteria. And then we'll have a whole bunch of our wonderful volunteers, and they'll sit at a table and they'll talk to the kids about what they do as a prosecutor, as a defense attorney, as an entertainment lawyer, as an insurance lawyer, as someone who is a lawyer and works at another organization. So we like to do that and show people and girls what it is to be a lawyer, a working lawyer. And we'll have stuff like this. This is a leadership discussion that we're having, and we're going to be talking to women who are leaders in their fields. So for those of you who have worked with us before, thank you so much for your ongoing support. And for those of you who are new to our work, I urge you to go look at our website. It's www.girlsrulethelaw.org, and see what we do and see how you can help, whether it's volunteering or attending a program such as this. So just a few housekeeping items for today. If you have any questions, right, since this is a webinar and not a meeting, in order for you to ask a question, you have to do it in the chat or the Q&A. We would ask that you keep your questions for the end. We have set aside time for our panelists to answer all the questions, so please keep that towards the end. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So what we have today is a Judge Marsha Michael. We have an entrepreneur and a lawyer, Christine Rodriguez. And we have a subject matter expert on diversity and inclusion, and that's Erica Edwards O'Neill, and she's also a lawyer. What they have in common is that their law degree and the commitment they have to the people that they serve with their work. So I hope that you will listen carefully, and I hope that you have a whole bunch of questions at the end, because they are giving up their time to be here with us and to share their wisdom with us. So let me start by briefly introducing you to our panelists. So let's start off with the Honorable Marsha Michael. She's a justice of the New York State Supreme Court. Judge Michael was born in St. Croix, Virgin Islands, and she moved to Bronx County when she was only 3 years old. She was raised in the Bronx, and where she attended public elementary school until she graduated later on from Cathedral High School, which is a Catholic school. Marsha's interest in the law began in junior high school after going to her mother's job at the Bronx District Attorney's Office. She watched her mom serve as a data entry clerk, assisting district attorneys, and decided she wanted to be a lawyer as well. She attended Binghamton University and focused her undergraduate studies on preparing to go to law school. She then graduated from law school and actually became a judge within 13 years, which is really, really unheard of. And we're going to be asking her some questions about that transition in a little bit. Next, I would like to welcome Ms. Erica Edwards O'Neill, founder and principal of EEO Consults. Erica is originally from Wakefield, Virginia, and now lives on Long Island. She received her bachelor's degree from the College of William and Mary and her law degree from Toro Law Center. She has a longstanding commitment to public service and diversity, and that's actually how I met Erica myself. Was we were put on a panel to speak together several years ago, and we have become fast friends ever since. And our final guest is attorney Christine Rodriguez. Christine is a native New Yorker, and she is a lifelong Upper West Sider. She is a graduate of the Beardsley School at Columbia College and Fordham Law School. She has her own private practice, both here and in North Carolina. And she has built her firm on a solid reputation as a litigator, negotiator, and a successful trial attorney. So welcome, ladies, to the panel. So let's get started with the question that I'm going to give to all of you. Yesterday, I was talking to somebody on another call, and they said, "What is your elevator pitch?" And it was really funny. I kind of laughed about it because I had created these questions. I knew I was going to ask you the same thing. But, and we also teach this to our girls when we teach them about networking. What is it when you meet somebody, let's say you're in an elevator and you have that 30 seconds to 1 minute to tell someone all about yourself so that they're interested in what you have to do and who you are. So starting with you, Judge, what is your elevator pitch?
Thank you. Thank you guys for having me. I'm so excited to speak with the young ladies. Now, in my role as judge, I've had to be very organized. I've had to be very driven. And the interesting part about that is that my role as the oldest of 4 children, believe it or not, has prepared me for that. You know, I was prepared at a very young age to be the person, the go-to person, the person that my mom depended on. And that has, over the years, given me those skills that I've needed to become a judge.
Okay, thank you, Judge. Erica.
You're muted.
You're muted.
Right, getting off to an amazing start. Sorry. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be presenting with, talking with this group and meeting you all virtually. So I'd say I am a diversity, equity, and inclusion professional, passionate advocate and lawyer with a focus on helping organizations create more inclusive, equitable, and inclusive workplaces, right? So that's my, that's the Twitter version of my a little bit longer elevator speech.
All right, thanks, Erica. Christine.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for taking out time to listen to us and giving us the opportunity to talk to you. It's really an honor. One thing I will say, just to start off, before I give you my elevator pitch, is that I'm constantly working on it, and I don't think I've perfected it yet. But usually at this point in my career, I tell people when I first meet them, I'm an attorney, a business owner, and an entrepreneur. I'm an experienced litigator, and most importantly, in my role with where my firm focuses right now is that I'm an employee advocate. My primary focus in business is to grow a business in a way that's accessible to people who need my services the most. And also to make it accessible to an underserved market, to have people have a resource to have my services and have someone serve them that they can identify with. And that is something that is underserved right now. So that is my primary focus. And that's what I like to use as my elevator pitch, because that's basically what I do every day.
Thank you, Christine. Okay, so that was your professional elevator pitch, right? That's what you tell people that you do. So before we kind of delve into this whole empowering ourselves in the workplace and advice to our younger selves, why don't you tell me something that is fun about you that people at your job don't know about you, and that people that you're just casually acquainted with may not know? So Judge Michael.
One of the things people may not know about me is that I'm very much interested in the creative world. So I love to throw parties. I love to do event planning. Most people may not know that, and most people who come to some of the events that I help out with are often really shocked after someone will say to them, "Oh, you know that she's a judge?" And everyone is often very shocked, because I just love getting my hands dirty. I love setting up an event that's beautiful. I love the color coordination about it. I love the theme process. It really is one of those things that I've learned over time that I really have a passion for.
Oh, I love that. We will call on you here at Rose. Erica, what about you?
Well, this is a professional world. People don't know, but in social and family, I am a bit of a foodie. I don't so much enjoy cooking. I like to bake, but I enjoy. I will travel nearly any place to sample some food and to take a picture. And I really, and so I have a group of I have a little bit of a Instagram page and a blog, and folks who call me quite frequently to ask where they should eat, and whether that's like a hole in the wall diner, soul food, breakfast ideally. Like I could eat breakfast every meal of the day, and that's my side thing, right?
That is great. See, and I did not know that, Erica.
Right.
So now you'll be my food go-to person.
Yeah.
What about you, Christine?
Well, I'm a little bit of an open book, I will say. So there isn't much that people don't really know about me, except that maybe if I'm at a business meeting, people would probably not know right off the bat that I'm a huge dog lover and an overall animal lover. So one of my recent guilty pleasures is binge watching the Secrets of the Zoo series on Nat Geo, and just watching every episode. I will tell you, if I didn't love what I do so much now, I would give it up in a hot minute and just go and become a zookeeper.
Oh, wow.
And maybe try to get a gig at the Bronx Zoo or at the big North Carolina Zoo, either one, or maybe both, and travel back and forth just to work with animals all the time because I love it so much.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you, ladies. I feel like we know all of you a little bit more now. So Judge Michael, we're going to start with you with the substantive questions, right? You were born in St. Croix and you moved to the United States when you were 3. And as you know, I have a similar experience, having been born in Honduras and coming to the United States when I was almost 6. So I always speak about being a half generation American, because people tend to say, if you're born here, or if you're born here, but your parents are from somewhere else, and that's the first generation. So for me, it's half generation because I came from somewhere else, but I got here early enough to be able to acculturate so that it's not that jarring as it is for immigrants. So how do you think that has colored your experience, coming from St. Croix and acculturating here and then going on to be a lawyer and a judge? Like, how do you think that has shaped that experience?
Well, just to back up a bit, I was born in St. Croix. Most of my family are from Antigua, and I have spent some time going to elementary school in Antigua. And for me, when I was growing up in the Bronx, Caribbean wasn't, at least in the South Bronx, where I grew up, not too far from the courthouse near Prospect Avenue. Being Caribbean was not really a thing, right? No one really knew, what it meant to be from Antigua or from St. Croix. Everyone just automatically assumed maybe you were Jamaican or you were African. So it caused for me a lot of, I wouldn't say embarrassment, but it was one of those things where as a kid, you didn't want to be different. You wanted to be like everyone else. So my mother, on the other hand, is very proud Caribbean. She still has an accent. in speaking to me, you would not hear any Caribbean accent, because it was one of those things that I perfected as a child, because I didn't want to be, sort of different. For growing, it was sort of like growing up in two different worlds, where in a Caribbean household, you hear certain things like, you're not going to spend the night at anyone's house. Like, we just don't do that.
Yes.
Where your other friends are having sleepovers, and you're like, but everyone else is having sleepovers. That's a part of the American experience. And, for my mom, it was like, well, you're not American. I'm like, but we're here. I am American. What do you mean? But how it has really colored the idea of the American dream for me is that, you can come from another country and your mom can not have a college education, work at the DA's office where she's basically handing folders to other people and doing data entry. But if you avail yourself of the educational opportunities, if you avail yourself of exposure, you can end up being a judge. You can have those opportunities available to you. Whereas my mom, she always likes to say, well, I'm really the judge. I can tell you what to do. I have more experience in the law than you do. But for her, it was like pouring into her children and giving her children that those opportunities and that exposure. And that is really what the American dream is. And it really is the Caribbean dream. It's the dream of any parent, right? To expose your children and to give them access to the opportunities that you might not have had.
Absolutely. I have to tell you, just a little side story of my own. We just got our Christmas tree. So we went and we bought a Christmas tree, and up here, it's a 7-foot tree. So it was like $60, right? And we're setting up the tree, and I was really happy to have it. And then I just started laughing because my mother, my parents are from Honduras, and we are from what I can only describe as abject poverty in Honduras, right? So to spend that sort of money on a tree, my mother never did. So I remember growing up in the projects in the South Bronx, and we're begging my mother for a Christmas tree because all our American friends were putting up their Christmas trees around Christmas time. And my mother was like, no, at that time it was like maybe $10, $15 for a tree, but she refused to spend it. She was like, I'm not spending money on a tree. She ended up finding a fake tree. It was like this fake, it wasn't even a Christmas tree, but it was like a fake tree. It was just green on the street somewhere. She brought it into the house, and we were so happy. We like strung up lights and stuff on this horrible tree. So when we were putting up my tree yesterday, I'm just cracking up to myself because I'm thinking about my mother. She's still alive. And I called her up and I'm like, remember when you got that ugly tree from, whatever, but it was just funny because that was sort of that foot into worlds thing, right? Where all your friends are having this American experience of buying their tree and doing this, and my mother refusing to spend money on the tree. But Erica, I want to talk a little bit about your career path because it's slightly different from the rest of us, right? So I want to delve into that a little bit. I want to delve into how it is that you ended up going into the diversity, equity, and inclusion space after, getting your law degree and being a lawyer for X number of years.
Absolutely. So it does actually also have to do with my upbringing. And thank you for, mentioning that I was born and lived in Virginia for half my life. So I am from a very small town in Wakefield, Virginia. Really, there are less than 4,000 people. There is a traffic light, a 7-Eleven, a grocery store, and a little eatery, diner. And so people were just very much the same. You were Black or white. There were no one that we knew that had lived in a different country, no one who was LGBTQ, no one who was Jewish. It was just very much the same. And so I went away to College of William and Mary, not far from, less than 2 hours away from home. And it was my first exposure to difference. And it was through a summer program that basically all diverse students could come onto campus a month early and to build relationship. And I met folks who were Black but from Germany, who were from Barbados, who were from all other parts of the world. And people think like, can that be the motivating factor? Absolutely, because I was a stone's throw from home, but I was having a very different experience from a lot of my friends and family. And so when I returned home to talk about things and ask questions, there was a bit of a disconnect, right? There were just things that people had not experienced. And so I had this natural desire to want to bridge a gap, right? As well as, I don't know if you know anything about Williamsburg, Virginia. It's a beautiful place where there is the dichotomy of a great deal of wealth, and right outside the tourist and college area, there's a great deal of poverty. Those two things that just created a disconnect in my brain. And so right after law school, I worked as an AmeriCorps Vista in the local Williamsburg area, focusing on housing rights. And we were earnestly going into neighborhoods and helping folks to purchase. If you were renting, helping you to purchase the homes. It was a non-for-profit that was buying homes and basically trying to buy the block. Many, many years ago, we figured if we put in parks, put in community, created community, and helped them create community associations, that would build and strengthen the communities. And so that, from the very beginning, even though I knew law school, it was always from the position of an advocate. For a long time, I thought criminal law, and then I started law school in DC, Washington, DC, in a school that had a first-year program that allowed for hands-on clinical involvement. And though I loved, and criminal law is still one of my favorites, I just did not have, honestly, the stomach for it. I took everything home and was like, this is just not for me. So anyway, the long story of that is that it is so much of what I do now has a great deal to do with my home and understanding and being. And so I'm the youngest of 6. My parents had 3 boys, 3 girls. And education was huge in our home, and neither of my parents finished high school, right? We owned a home, we owned property, they were hardworking. I watched my mother work her way up through governmental contract systems where she was managing people. And so the lack of education was not something that she let stop her. And it was at that time and that age, if a family member was sick, the oldest child needed to leave to take care. And that was both my parents' story. So college and higher education and additional pursuit were never up for discussion. So there was always that drive, and also the notion of systems that just didn't seem fair, right? So that really helped to inform. And so I always wanted to translate. It was human rights, civil rights, and then the DE&I space when I entered law school. And I felt like when I entered college, when I entered law school, when I was in not-for-profit space, there seemed to be no space where there were enough people of color. And that just puzzled me. So
I agree. Christine, so you are a labor and employment attorney. You said a little bit about, when you introduced yourself before, you said a little bit about workers' rights. So I'm going to allow you to talk a little bit about that. But I want you to tell us about how you got to that area of the law, because I know you said you're an entrepreneur. There's other things that define you, but your main space is that workers' rights and labor and employment. So why don't you tell us a little of your journey?
Sure. The funny thing is that Erica just mentioned criminal law, and I actually started out right out of the gate from law school as a prosecutor in Manhattan. And that was just the first 5 years of my career. It was also part of my training while I was in law school, because I took every opportunity that I could to either do a clinic or have a job that would expose me, so that I could be very sure about where I wanted to be. And so I spent those first 5 years as a prosecutor, and then decided that I wanted to expand my horizons, do a little bit more. And I went into private practice and landed at what is characterized as an insurance defense firm. So I was defending cases that are brought by people that get injured, right? Personal injury cases, but I was defending those cases for the companies. And as part of that practice, one of the partners at that firm handled employment litigation. So disputes between companies and their employees when the companies, had their own insurance coverage. And so when that partner left, there was sort of a gap in the firm, and somebody needed to fill that hole. And me being the person that I am, I'm always so very curious and always wanting to learn something new. And I was very hungry to learn sort of and expand and learn more areas of the law and hone my skills. I jumped into it with 2 feet. And so started to get very good at it. But I eventually realized that it wasn't what I wanted to be doing because I was sort of on the wrong side. I wanted to be helping the people that were bringing the claims that had legitimate claims.
Mhm.
And you know, there are some people that do bring claims and they're not so great, but most of the people that bring claims, they feel like they've been wronged in some way. And I think that came home for me when I had to help a number of friends and family members while I was still employed by that firm, find an attorney and work their way through the process of either leaving a big corporation because, you know, they were asked to leave and they were offered a severance agreement, or they felt like they were being mistreated at work, or they thought that their union wasn't properly representing them, or for whatever reason. And I found that this issue came up so often, and that I really felt like I needed to start doing it. And once I started doing it, I knew I was home.
Yeah. Wow.
I actually initially moved in when I started my own practice because what I did was I left that firm eventually. And it's so funny because usually when you leave a firm, they're like, yeah, okay, we'll see you, bye. I was actually still very close to the people that I worked with and even helped them do some work on my way out. But I left because I wanted to start my own practice.
Yeah.
And I did that. And I started doing representing employees instead of representing the companies and getting wins for them. And that was really where I wanted to be. And at the same time, I had two sides of that practice. Since I was already a prosecutor for a number of years, I was also doing criminal defense work for a very, very long time. And I always see it as sort of like two sides of the same kind of practice. You know, is people in crisis.
Yeah.
People really needing help at the worst time of their life.
Yeah.
And I think like Erica, a little bit of it was that I took so much of it home, especially for the criminal defense work, even though I really did love it. But I eventually really realized that my niche and my thing was fixing things. I am the ultimate, I think I'm like the family fixer. I'm naturally a fixer. I'm I'm the person that people come to when it's like, all right, something's arrived. Can you please help me fix this? Let's get this. And that's basically what I do for a living. I fix it. I help people transition. I help people move on from bad employment situations with dignity, on their terms. And I love it. I love every aspect of it.
So, which brings me to my next question to all of the panelists, and we'll just go in reverse order, Christine, since you're talking about what you love. We don't want to give the impression to the young ladies, right, that the practice of law and being a judge and everything is all beautiful and rosy all the time. So what is it that you like the least about what you do? Like, you know, I can tell you that what I have a whole bunch of jobs, you know, we were joking about that before. In the practice of law, what I probably like the least is the billable hours. You know, I just want to throw myself into work. I don't like having to like, oh, I worked half hour on this, you know, whatever. For girls' role is probably, and Juana can attest to this, is that it's tracking down people, hunting down people, and making them understand that this kind of work also takes money, right? Like, you should sponsor us and donate, and just begging for money is really annoying. So you could love everything about your job, but there's always that one thing that's like really annoying about it. So what's your least favorite thing about what you do?
I don't know that I dislike it, but I think it's the hardest part of it is the sort of the managing of the clients. And I don't mean to say, because I really actually enjoy providing services to people and helping people. But a lot comes with that, because when you're a lawyer in the type of practice area like mine, you know, a lot of the times you find yourself being a little bit of a social worker. You're not just dealing with the legal issue, right? You're dealing with every aspect of that person's life, all the baggage that comes with it. And it sometimes is hard to separate, right? It comes at a cost where there's so much energy that you have to give to helping that client, not just with the legal, you know, the legal nuts and bolts of their situation, but also kind of getting them to that point. And then also asking them sometimes for money to do it, right? And telling them, you know, this is going to take money. And explaining to them that, you know, if I could do it, I would work for free, but I can't. And I think that's the hardest part of what I do. But at the end of the day, as an attorney, although you may love providing the services and doing the work that you do, you're also making a living. And so I think that's just, where you have to kind of learn to accept that.
Yeah.
But I think that's the hardest part of what I do.
Erica, what do you like least, or the hardest part, as Christine has sort of rephrased it for
I'd
me?
say it's a tie. One is the social worker aspect of it, where I really want to, I too am a fixer. And so I try to remind myself to leave a situation better than I found it, even if I can't fix it, right? And so and then the other real 100% honest is folks who are looking to check a box in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space.
Yeah.
I am uninterested in that. So if you're looking for change and challenge, call me up. If you're looking to check a box for a press release, I will be one of the people encouraging people to ask deeper questions about the why. I don't care if the situation is messy. I'm for transparency and digging in. I do not like the checking the box piece, though.
Got you. What about you, Judge?
Just to back up a little bit, I know that when you asked me to do the elevator pitch, I realized that I didn't do that great of a job at it, because I'm just not accustomed to letting people know the type of work that I do, because it just brings up and opens up a whole can of worms. But for the young ladies, it's important to know that you can realize you didn't do something well and backtrack and pick it back up. But I am a judge, and I work in the Bronx County Supreme Court on a criminal term. So that means that I am seeing people at their worst.
Yeah.
And what I like least about that is the impression that everyone seems to have that a judge can control every outcome. And if an outcome isn't what you deem it should be, that somehow the judge is at fault. So for example, there are often times when I have young ladies or young men, and I say young men because they're just 21, and they're before me and they're in some very dire circumstances. But as a judge, as a person from this community, I know that person. Not that I know them personally, but I know their story. I know that they are me. And if given just that little tweak to change it, just given that little opportunity, that bit of mercy to set them on a different path, the impact in their life can be so huge. And sometimes I don't have the power to do that. I need to get buy-in from a prosecutor. I need to get buy-in from the person who's before me. And not being able to sometimes get that buy-in in a critical case where I know that if we just tweaked it and gave that person some programming, some supports, just something different than incarceration, the impact on that person's life, their family's life, can be so great. And not having the ability sometimes to weigh in on that, it kills me sometimes. But there are other places where I'm able to do it. So I take the good with the bad.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for that, Judge. So we're going to go back to Christine. The subtitle of the presentation is Finding Your Personal Power in the Workplace. So it's kind of your wheelhouse. So what advice would you give to women to set the right tone at a new job from the outset?
This is something that I actually see not just in my practice, not just in work, but also in my practice, is that you should approach every job, every opportunity that you have by coming in and acting as if you belong there. Always speak up, always act like you belong in the room, even if you don't think that you do. Because you're there, right? And you need to be part of it. Don't let anyone shut you down. Always, give your contribution is the first thing that I would say. And that will always empower you in the workplace, because it will let the people around you know that you're serious about, the work that you do. You're serious about your career. You have your own self-esteem, your own self-respect, it will help people see you and be less prone to treat you disrespectfully and to dismiss you. I'm not saying that it will work in every instance, right? But you really have to like walk in the room like you own it, always. The other thing that I would say is when you're in the workplace, own your mistakes and don't be afraid of them. Everybody makes mistakes. No one comes into the workplace knowing how to do something 100%. And rather than, pretending that you're at the top of the food chain and that you know everything, right? Nobody likes to know it all. Instead, be that person that's working, that's constantly learning, and that can understand and be honest about perhaps not knowing how to do something or making a mistake and learning from it and doing better. Every boss, every colleague appreciates that. And again, it only will bring you respect in the workplace, which I think is the number one thing that you always have to have. That's your number one empowerment, is if people respect you, they look up to you, and then you can move on. Treat people with compassion. Treat the, I think President Obama used to say this all the time, right? Treat the janitor the same way that you treat the CEO. Everybody who is there for a reason and contributes, and everybody is just as important as the next person.
Exactly.
And you could have been at that stage at any point in your life. As a business entrepreneur myself, I am not only the secretary and the person who files, I'm the boss. So I've done every job in my business. And when I have people who work with me, I try to, treat everybody with respect, no matter what level they're at. They're a colleague. They're not my underling. They're not somebody to boss around. They're somebody who's part of my team working with me that makes my business better. So when you're in the workplace, everybody that works in your workplace is part of your team, right? And is going to make you better and allow you to do what you do. And I think that's very, very important.
It is. Thank you.
And I think the final thing is just ask for help when you need it, but don't only ask for help after you've put in the work, right? Put in the work, do what you need to do. Don't ask for help expecting someone to tell you how to do something or show you how to do something or doing it for you. Put in the work, and if you need an assist, don't be afraid to ask for it.
I remember my first job, it's a lesson I sort of learned, not the hard way, because I always was taught to treat people with respect as well, especially because my parents were blue collar workers. My mother was a cleaning lady for a really long time. So I would never go in somewhere and, ignore the janitor or the receptionist even. But I remember applying for my first job, going for an interview, and I said hello to the receptionist. How are you feeling? I'm here to see so-and-so. And then, when they let me in, I would say thank you. And then when I was leaving, I would say thank you so much for your help today. And when I went back to the second or third interview, they told me that the reason they called me back was because I was so courteous to the receptionist, that some of the other people who had gone in, some of these other, 1L, 2L students who had gone in, had just ignored the receptionist and were like, I'm here to see so-and-so, and didn't even bother that common courtesy. So I love what you said about you treat everybody the same way, whether it's the janitor, I know you're paraphrasing President Obama, whether it's the janitor or the president of the United States, everyone has value, so they should be treated as such, which is great.
Mirna, before you move on, I have to say this because you brought up a memory that I hadn't thought of in so long. My first summer associate position it was a mid-sized firm in Midtown Manhattan. I was the only summer associate of color. We had a smaller class because it was a middle-sized firm, so it was like middle to large, and there was 4 of us. I was the only person of color, and I remember setting up my office during the first week, and some 2 or 3 of the staff came by, and then just to say hello. And it wasn't attorneys; it was just regular staff. And one of them came in and asked me what my background was. So I told them, I said, my family's Puerto Rican. I'm Puerto Rican. I was born in New York. But do you speak Spanish? Yes, I speak Spanish. And they were like, you don't know how happy we are to see you. We've never seen any attorney that looks like you here. And I really hope that they keep you here and that you get a job, because we really want to have someone like you. And the reason that I thought about that is because you know, all those people came to say hello to me, and it wasn't like I was like, oh, why are you here? Are you bothering me?
Exactly.
I was kind of like, you know, wow, cool. All these people are coming to see me as a new attorney. And I'm glad that I was like that, because those people were all kind of looking to me as I'm the next step.
Yeah.
And you don't want to disappoint those people, right? All those people are looking to you as their example. Everything that you do, the people that come behind you are looking to you. And that's so important. I hadn't thought about that in years, though. Wow.
Well,
Wow.
thank you for sharing that, Christine. Judge Michael, pivoting to you. You first became a judge in 2015 after passing the bar in 2002. So you were a judge within 13 years of getting your license to practice law. Congratulations on that. It's a huge achievement. So as a young judge and as a woman of color, did you get a lot of pushback from the people who were coming before you because you were young, or because you were a woman, because you were a woman of color? And, you know, how did you deal with that?
I think it was because of all three, and sometimes because of none, right? And for me, in terms of dealing with it, it was really dealing with the inside, right? So again, I was young, and, you know, just to share one story, when I first got on the bench, maybe about 3 months in, I came down with my robe on my arm, went up to the bench, was about to take my seat. I'm a little germaphobe, so I was wiping everything down. And one of the lawyers yelled out, well, when is the judge gonna get here? You keep coming here and putting stuff on the bench. Also sarcastic, and I think I'm funny. I said, well, the judge, she is me and I am her. Whenever you're ready, we'll call your case. But it just hadn't occurred to that person that a person who looked like me would be in that position, for whatever reason. But the real work on the way in which those things come up, because they're going to come up in every facet of your life. People are going to look at you and expect that you are one way, or you are not, you know, one thing, or you're not in a certain position. And for me, it was really about becoming internally confident in the position. And understanding that I had the tools to be successful. All of the things that I had done prior to getting on the bench had prepared me for the tough work. Giving myself grace to understand, yes, sometimes I'm going to make mistakes. Sometimes I might not have the right answer, but really feeling like, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be. And once I had that grounded in my spirit, all of the other reasons why people may think that I'm not supposed to be in a position are really irrelevant, because at the end of the day, I'm still the judge, right? You're still waiting for my decision on something. And, you know, unless you appeal me, my decision is my decision. So I leave people to deal with their own discomfort with me being in a position, and for me to deal with being comfortable where I am and confident in what I'm doing.
Thank you so much, Judge. Erica, on to you. One of the things that I have seen that disempowers women, and particularly women of color in the workplace, is what we would call microaggressions, right? So that's when either somebody or a group of somebodies undermines you in a way that is subtle, but it's damaging to your psyche and confidence and how you proceed in the workplace. And it's usually because of gender or race, right? That's usually where microaggressions comes in. So the question I have for you has two parts. One is, how do you recognize a microaggression in the workplace? And two, how do you address it without setting your job on fire, right? Like, how do you say, you know, this is unacceptable without damaging yourself in the workplace?
Absolutely. So one is that I usually go through a list of things that I say, you might be experiencing a microaggression if you hear something like, it's really just a joke. Don't be so serious. I'm not trying to be racist, anti-Semitic, homophobic, or X, but anyway, inserts that saying. No need, don't mean to offend, but no harm intended. And then insert the most harmful statement you could ever hear. Or if you're reporting that to someone and they say, I'm sure they didn't mean it that way. I am positive that he or she or they would never do X thing with the intent to hurt you. And so often it's easier to recognize when people want to focus on the intent instead of the impact. And when we're talking about microaggressions, they are small slights. They are tiny little stings, cuts, mosquito bites is how they've been described. And likely the less number of privileges you have, the more often you are likely to experience them, right? And so the other thing, I think the classic example for women of color, people of color, is that notion of where are you from, which to the deliverer of that statement seems, but I'm just curious, I'm looking to strike up a conversation, I want to know, but as a receiver on that end, what you often hear, that the underlying message is, I look different, I look out of place, I look out of ordinary, I look exotic, unique, or something different. And that's like, right? Do I belong? Right? Absolutely that. That is like, where are you from? Where are you from? Where are your people from? Like that is an example of a microaggression. Another example is, I totally don't think of you as Black, or I totally don't think of you as X, right? You're different. Those are actually all things that I think I've heard in the workplace. So, sad to say. And then if you're experiencing a microaggression, the idea is, the first recommendation is to call out. And that doesn't mean call out in a way that is aggressive. If safe, if it is a workplace, work environment where you feel safe to call out on your own, then do so. If not, I say recommend to a manager, supervisor, teacher, someone who's in another position of authority and with an ideal hope that that person will respond appropriately. If you feel that it is a safe environment and that you have the support and feel comfortable, some of the things that I do again is like call them out, confront if you feel safe to do so, but also acknowledging what is it that you hope to accomplish. Are you looking for an apology? Are you looking to make folks aware? Are you looking to simply stop the behavior if it has been reoccurring? Those are like having your own understanding of what you're hoping to get. And then I'd say when prepared, it is often the best tool to question, like, well, what do you mean by that? And why do you say that? And what does, tell me a little bit more about why you think XYZ position, right? So often to question or to repeat back to the person. And what I have found is that when people hear what they have said repeated back to them, it can be jarring. So those are recommendations.
Thank you so much, Erica. One of the microaggressions that I've gotten in my career is, I obviously have natural hair, and one woman told me at a job several years ago, it was a regional office of something, and she said, well, our boss is coming in from Ohio tomorrow, and I'm just letting you know ahead of time so you can do something more professional with your hair. And so my question to her, I actually remained calm, which was great. But my question to her was, oh, really? Can you please tell me what you find unprofessional about my hair? And she, she kind of got flustered and she said, oh, I don't want to make this a racial thing. She's like, if it was a Jewish woman, I would say, with curly hair, I would say it was unkempt as well. So in other words, my hair was messy and unkempt. So that's an interesting conversation for another day about these microaggressions. So I see that we're running out of time. Juana is like poking me, but I want to end with this question to you all three ladies before we pivot to the questions from the attendees. The subtitle, right, sort of the theme of this was advice to your younger self. So if you had a time machine and you can go back to your younger self at 13 and give yourself some piece of advice, what would that advice be? And then there's a second part to that is, would that advice change at 18, 21, and 25, and why? So let's start with you, Judge Michael.
I would say to my younger 13-year-old self that being different is perfect. It is how you were divinely created to have your own very uniqueness and to nurture that. because it's the thing that is going to take you far in life. And instead of suppressing it, to really build on it, and that it is okay. Everyone has their different uniqueness that's going to make them who they are. And they were created that way for a purpose, and they will find what that purpose is. Of course, my advice would change at 18. And at 18, you know, I would tell myself, my younger self, that be open, be more open to new people. Because that was a time I was going to college, and it was, you know, I met people who also came from the Bronx, and then those became my main friends. So I would tell my 18-year-old self to open up a bit more and accept in people from, you know, different places. And 21, 25, I would tell myself to calm down a bit about where life might take me, because it'll all get sorted out, and to enjoy what it is that you look like at that time, right? Instead of complaining, because that at that time, all you can be is beautiful, you know, and to just enjoy that time and realize that it will all work itself out the way that it ought to.
Yeah, I agree. Erica?
I was going to say ditto. So now my statement is exactly that to my 13-year-old self, is that it's okay to be different, and that difference is what is your superpower, right? And you will eventually find your tribe of equally odd, unique, different people. To my 18-year-old self, it would be go bravely, right? Because I am a little bit neurotic and like wanting to know. Still, I've always I need all the steps. I need steps 1 through 30 before I take step 1 sometimes. So go bravely. Just, you know, jump. It's okay. And this is the time where you can make some of the mistakes, right? You have greater time to recover.
Yeah.
And 21, it would be 21 to 25. Enjoy the journey, because you do blink, and you're past it. So enjoy the journey, and not looking for that. Like as soon as I can't wait to finish law school. I can't wait to finish the bar. I can't wait to get that job. I can't wait to do this thing, the house, the car, and it like really slow down and enjoy the journey.
Oh, that's great. I love that. Christine, I see you like, tell us, what are you thinking?
I'm just soaking it all in, because you know, a lot of what Judge Michael and what Eric are saying is so many of the things that I've thought about for all these years, and I so agree with that. I think, you know, for my youngest self, right, my 13-year-old self, I still needed to be more social, and I think if I could go back and say, you need mentors, you need people to teach you. But I think the most important thing was that whole thing of, you know, being different is your superpower. For me, it was, you know, I needed to learn more about my own culture and where I came from. In addition to all the book learning and learning about being the same as everyone else, because I was so focused at that age on trying to be the same as a lot of people around me, and how other people thought I should be. And I really needed to start, you know, listening to more Latin music, maybe learning how to dance at 13 instead of at 22. Those things, you know, and then kind of fast forwarding a little bit to 18, I would say, take it down a notch. You know, don't be so sure about where I need to be. There, you know, it's kind of an open book, and I should have been a little bit more open and not so tunnel visioned at that point. But then at 21, to kind of say, you know, thinking back at some of the things that I was doing at 21, it's like, don't doubt yourself so much. Don't question it, you know, try it. Don't be afraid to fail. And then once I was getting to 25, and I'm thinking more 25 to 35 in that span, is, you know, Christine, just enjoy life and enjoy what you're doing. It's a marathon. It is not a sprint. You are not running out of time. And I am still learning those lessons when I'm much further along than 25 right now. And I still have to remind myself that it's a marathon. It is not a sprint. Just enjoy it. You know, there's time to do the things that you want to do, and you'll get there.
Thank you so much, Christine. Erica, we had a question, I guess a follow-up on the microaggression. And it says, for Erica, in terms of microaggressions, it seems like the recipient of the microaggression would need some self-awareness as well. That is, when faced with the microaggression, how do you deal with the immediate impact of it?
I think it's all about a couple of things. So when we talked about, thank you for the question. It is that kind of, what is the relationship with this person? Is this someone that you are working with, going to school with, someone in the family? That is there time for you to take pause and gather yourself and also reject the notion, right? So the notion of letting it roll off, that's great in practice, right? So I'd say, you want to say that thing doesn't stick, but sometimes it does come through. It does poke through. And I will tell you, the truth is, you don't actually see the results right away. You don't even realize until it shows up later. And maybe you're starting to doubt. And I'll say, there's a great book website. The gentleman's name is Resmaa Menakem, Resmaa Menakem. He talks about healing racialized trauma. After reading that book, one of the things I realized is that how microaggressions show up for me is rereading emails over and over and over again. Like that notion of perfection, of not wanting to get it wrong. And I had to face, like, what does that look like? So the truth is, you may not know. And so it's also about reaffirming and having conversations with different people, because you will then start to say, oh, did you get that same question? Oh, you've had that thing too. And it's only when you start to have conversations with people. And I know that this is like at your age, it may not be, you may talk about light things, but sometimes it's important to have a conversation either with a mentor or a sponsor or a peer to say, this thing was said to me, and I'm not sure how to process it, right? That might be a deeper level, but I will say, whether it's like journaling, it's important to check in with yourself, because even as adult, as it's growing, we still hear these things, as Mirna just said. I think you do have to give yourself, it depends on the situation. If this is a place where you can step away so that you can remain calm, and gather your thoughts. And sometimes this will happen, unfortunately, many times. Sometimes it's not even worth your mental energy to address, right? There's someone who may be operating in a space of ignorance, and that's just where you leave them. And so it goes back to the question of, what are you hoping to accomplish? Is it awareness for that person? Is it an apology? Or is it to stop the behavior? I think it is starting to question, when microaggressions happen, what do I want to happen in response? On the one hand, but in terms of self-care, it is taking it to someone you trust, someone who you can express it with and talk it through, right? So I hope that I answered the question. That was a lot of different directions.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. We also had a question from Patience McHenry. Patience, if you want to, someone asked about how do we get questions to specific panelists. You can email me, Mirna, Mirna, at girlsrulethelaw.org, and I will make sure to answer any questions that you have offline. And for everyone else who's on, if you want to learn more about what we do and what the organization does, and if you can get involved, it's www.girlsrulethelaw.org. Now, my last, we have a few minutes left. So for my panelists, if every person on this call could take away one thing, they could just remember one thing that you've said, what is that one thing? So let's start with you, Judge. It's a great place to wrap up.
I would say that embracing that uniqueness, embracing your superpower, and being okay with that. And you take that with you, and that'll take you far.
Thank you. Erica?
That's going to sound a little bit like a catchphrase, but this is something that I say to myself and I say to my daughters, to lead from wherever you land, right? And this was said to me about 8 years ago when I was looking to make a transition from a role, and maybe 9 years ago, and I was talking to a colleague and a little bit complaining, and she said, I don't care how small it is, you have a sphere of power. We all have some power. So have you have you figured out what you can recommend, how you can be the problem solver, how you can lead from exactly where you are sitting in some way or form? And I think that is to always think about the situation in that space.
Thank you, Erica. And Christine?
I think the one thing that I take with me every day and that I would take away from this is always speak and act like you belong, because the reality is that you always do.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. If no one has any other questions, I know we were answering them as we went along, then this is a perfect time to wrap up. Again, thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedules to be here with us and to listen to our amazing panelists, for them taking their time out of their schedule as well to be here and volunteer their time. Thank you so much for supporting us throughout the year. I saw a lot of the names that were registering, and it wasn't just young ladies from middle and high schools. It was also ladies, women that I work with. So thank you for being here. If there is nothing else, then we will say goodbye and thank you, and see you next year for our next in the series of these leadership lessons for girls and women, which is going to be being authentically yourself. Subtitle, Come As You Are and Allow Others to Come As They Are. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I really enjoyed this. Thanks. Bye now.